Decision-making is how we live our lives. We want to be making good decisions for ourselves and for those that we love. We want to make good decisions to be successful and to reach our goals. Professionally and personally, we want to make good decisions so that we treat people with respect and decency. We want to be respected, and we often get respect through giving our respect to others. Do we give our respect to everyone equally? Of course not. Some deserve our respect, others less so. And then there's a mass in the middle. How do we know how to properly apply our respect? How do we know who's earned more of it versus who's earned less of it? That's done through the evaluation and assessment of evidence and circumstances over the course of events. That's done by looking at past behavior and patterns that present themselves that allow us to see the broadest picture possible, so that intentions, at least to the point where we can apply objective plausibility, can be included as part of those evaluations and assessments. Bias manipulation plays a role in the development and reinforcement of a bias. Bias manipulation can be internal or external, but it's usually a strong combination of both when talking about the deepest biases that drive the most extreme behavior. A common component of that manipulation is to influence the individual into adopting one or more grievances, whichever grievances are tied to the bias. The picture that's painted time and again is that the grievance or grievances are so significant that there is justification for addressing them with anger and outrage. So who does it? Who does the manipulating? That question is not so easy to answer because we have to look beyond self-manipulation. There are also strong external forces that contribute to the bundling, spreading, and reinforcement of bias. People look to the media as a source of the manipulation that produces bias, and there is some evidence that supports that. But that doesn't mean that every journalist has compromised their journalistic integrity. To paint with such broad strokes only works to reinforce a biased view that all journalistic integrity is inherently compromised. Journalists are just one example. And what is the end game of manipulation? Manipulation is always about deception that attempts to promote and justify delusion. It's the common goal of manipulation to deceive the individual into living and perceiving reality with one or more distortions in place that seek to drive specific behavior. Manipulation is used to obstruct or impede freedom of thought and freedom of behavior. A good 21st century example of this is around the biased claim that COVID-19 is a hoax. Across social media and on other platforms, arenas, and channels, there was a claim being made that COVID-19 was not real. There was another claim that COVID-19 was no more dangerous than the common cold. Imagine how different the world would look to people that believed these claims, these biases, as truth. How would people that believe these claims behave compared to those that believed the science that was being reported? That COVID-19 is definitely real and definitely more dangerous than the common cold. We can minimize the influence that biases have over our thought and behavior by first recognizing biases where they exist, recognizing the claims being made by each bias, and recognizing the desired call to action that the bias's claim inherently seeks to instill into its believers. The challenge is that objectivity is what's needed to bring a mind to a more objective state, and that's not always easy to do. That takes effort and perseverance. That takes resolve. Delusion is an integral part of the human experience. Everyone experiences it to a different degree. We may have an inflated view on the value we bring to a partner or to a team. We may underappreciate or underrespect people that are deserving of appreciation and respect. We may undervalue ourselves or get stuck on certain parts of our personality or physical appearance and blow it out of proportion. The bottom line is that delusion causes someone to see the world in a distorted way, when it's actually quite different and quite to the contrary. And that person is oblivious to that fact. The definition being used here is one in which delusion is the difference, or the delta, between how we perceive reality, basically our version of reality, and reality itself, without any bias or interpretation applied to it. There's reality, the natural unfolding of events and actions as time passes. And then there's the way we view our reality. That degree of separation between those two states of mind, that's what defines the type of impact that delusion has over a person. The greater the separation, then the greater the probability for high-impact delusional behavior. We are saying that everyone lives with a degree of delusion, but what do we mean by that? How can that be? Most people are rational people, logical people. Most people are grounded in reality. That's at least what we tell ourselves. But let's look at some real-world examples of how delusion is very real, and a very real part of life. Love can make someone delusional. When we see things in another person and overlook the obvious flaws that are so transparent to others. Rage can make us delusional. When we see things in another person, whether they actually exist in that person or not, and blow them completely out of proportion. Boredom can make someone delusional. When we count raindrops and feel like the sky is raining harder just so that we have to keep up with our counting. Anxiety can make us delusional. When we have a panic attack at the idea of getting up to deliver a presentation. Fear is directly tied to delusion and the power of delusion. Think about someone who literally screams in terror at a non-venomous spider that's no bigger than your fingernail. The person can be told that it's a non-venomous spider. They can see how small the spider is, but still, they can literally feel their skin crawl at the sight of a small, harmless spider. Phobias, in particular, are a very individual expression of delusion. People are afraid of different things, so the trigger will vary, but the common thread is that the phobia causes irrational behavior based on the delusion and the claims that created that delusion. The most difficult part of overcoming bias is overcoming the delusion that bias creates. That takes time, and that takes commitment and focus to objectively evaluate and distinguish between what's real and what is delusion. It's not a singular event, but over time we can overcome what was initially holding us back, and we can be free from delusion if we choose to be.